Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. My partner in crime for this project is sick, and our presentation was supposed to be a dialogue about the feminist practice in the way this project came about, given that she's Palestinian and I'm Israeli. Since she couldn't arrive, I kind of been scrambling a little bit to change the presentation so it makes sense. Hopefully it does. I'm going to dive into it. This project is conceived, it's fairly conceived, and we've done some of the research, but the actual work hasn't happened, and I'm really looking forward to your feedback on some of the questions. And the other thing I'll say before I start reading is that to me, the project was conceived as all my political solidarity work with Palestinians has happened. It has been conceived as a feminist project, or part of my feminist understanding, and it's not just conceptually or politically, but also in the practices, which hopefully I'll have enough time in the end to show you and we can talk about. Okay, so I'm just going to read so that I can manage to cover some material. Saul Worth, a photographer, filmmaker, and researcher, argued that pictures, paintings, movies, television, or sculpture cannot be either true or false signs, and that therefore they cannot communicate the kind of statement the meaning of which can be interpreted as true or false. Speech and verbal behavior, on the other hand, may not always be concerned with truth or falsity, but are formally and socially designed to be so. Photographs of the neighborhood Katamon in Jerusalem, for instance, do not reveal its complex past. Established as a Palestinian middle-class neighborhood, housed after 1948 by Jewish refugees from the Old City, and eventually gentrified in numerous ways. Worth suggested, and this is in the early 1970s, that we need a different semiotic system for the understanding of the meaning of visual signs. Most importantly, for my case here, we need a system that recognizes that a photographic picture cannot negate its own content representation, but also cannot assert a particular truth value. I would like to extend this argument to physical spaces, more specifically to houses. I want to argue that a house carries traces of its history, but it primarily exists in a present tense that is subordinated to its contemporary uses and contexts. Oops, I missed one, sorry. Landscape is the work of the mind, writes Shimon Shama in Landscape and Memory. Following Shama, Meron Benvenisti, the son of one of Zionism's first geographers and a former deputy mayor of Jerusalem, embarked on an extensive research project to find what he called the white patches in the mental maps of Israelis, patches that were enabling them to cover or erase the habitat of the other, or Palestinians, from their consciousness. And the map, I had to cut out the whole part about the map, but this hand-drawn map is the beginning of this whole project, and I can talk about it later if there is time. In 2008, I made a video called Two Houses and a Longing, and I engaged with the history of two houses, two Palestinian homes in West Jerusalem. This is one of them. And I engaged with rewriting signs. And so that it might be hard to see with the light, but the house that belonged to a famous intellectual, Palestinian intellectual called Khalil Sakakini, is now a Canadian Hadassah Vitzo daycare center, and that's what it says in Hebrew and English. And I added in the video, owned by Khalil Sakakini. Then, together with Dana Olman, we developed a proposal for a research/creation project, and we received funding. The idea is to find the Palestinian families from Sakakini's map, which I briefly showed, and help them produce short, poetic videos about the idea of their lost homes in Katamon. We want to project these videos on the houses, so the act of commemoration becomes an act of reinscribing a presence and perhaps of reimagining the future. And obviously this is a very crude, this is not what it's going to look like, but I'm just trying to layer the present with the past. In the 1990s, Gunter Deming started installing Stolperstein or stumbling blocks in the cobbled streets of Berlin. Before the Holocaust, when Germans stumbled on the streets, they used to say, "There must be a Jew buried here." The project, which has grown to include all victims of the Nazi machinery, is based on installing a plate in the street naming the people who lived there. The Stolperstein may indeed activate the stopper-by in imagining lives that were destroyed and then eradicated. There are many differences between the atrocities of the Nazis and the Palestinian Nakba, and I'm not trying to equate the two. My lesson from Deming's project, and this is a different piece by Shimon Ati, is that we can intervene in a space in fruitful ways to evoke the past. But one crucial difference is that the Nazis were so successful in nearly obliterating whole communities that there is not much beyond commemoration or a lesson to the future to be achieved. In contrast, the Palestinian past has never really passed, to quote Laila Abu Luhud, and the conflict over land and sovereignty is alive and kicking. We're therefore hoping to use this project as a way to go beyond commemoration into the realm of assertion of presence of two nations and numerous ethnic and class communities within each. For instance, the 1948 is called in Hebrew the War of Independence or the War of Resurrection, and I'm showing the battles around the neighborhood Katamon, but you can't see it very well. In Arabic, it is called the Nakba or catastrophe. A project like this can bring the Nakba into the story of independence. And I can't really spend time talking about signage, but signage is very important, and language is obviously very important in this. In short, all the Arabic names of the neighborhoods stayed and are what's being used rather than the Hebrew names that were assigned. A look at the map prior to 1948 shows how mixed the Jewish and Palestinian communities were, and everything that's striped on this map are neighborhoods that were mixed. By projecting in Katamon, we may remove another white patch, the one that conveniently describes West Jerusalem as an Israeli space and not part of any negotiation of a future agreement with Palestinians. In this context, we want to engage with current and past Israeli residents of the same neighborhood, who will make short videos as well, dealing with their own sense of home, but also coming to terms with the Palestinian Nakba, or disaster, of 1948. And this space is actually now the International Christian Embassy. So it's very interesting with the Israeli flag and other flags and the menorah. What we're asking of the Israeli participants is not a small feat. Obviously, for the Israeli residents to acknowledge the Palestinian past of their home is not a theoretical question, but a deep emotional task. If I acknowledge that my house belongs to someone else, where is my place? In one of our recent conversations, Dana and I repeatedly talked about the question of the right of return and how challenging it is for Israelis. Finally, Dana pointed out, with quite a bit of justified frustration, that there is no question of the right of return. The right of return is a principled right, and it cannot be questioned or alternatively granted by Israelis. It took me aback, but I realized she was right. In principle, and by international law, war refugees have a right to return to their homes. At the same time, acknowledging this right does not mean that we're presuming it can be realized. And a t-shirt like this and signage like this is obviously evoking a lot of anxieties for Israeli Jews and other Jews who are invested in Israel. Where is the place? Is there a place in this for Jews as well? Another wave of expulsions will neither solve the problem nor handle the fact that two people share the same country and need to negotiate how to live together, starting by uncovering various pasts. We, Dana and I, have struggled a lot with the question of whether Palestinians and Israelis should be involved in a shared project at this moment in time. In the immediate post-Oslo years, we witnessed the mushrooming of dialogue projects funded and celebrated by Israel, Europe, and North America to promote the so-called newly achieved peace between Israel and the Palestinians. And this is a very partial list. There are maybe 40 different camps in North America every summer for Jewish and Palestinian youth together for dialoguing. During the same years, 1993 to 2000, Israel doubled the size of the settlements and expanded its occupation of the West Bank via various measures, including a series of roads open only to Israeli citizens. It slowly became clear that dialogue projects were publicly masking and normalizing the entrenchment of the occupation. More recent art projects avoid political questions altogether. Gaza/Sderot, an Arte TV 2008 project that documented the life of 6 Palestinian and 6 Israelis for 2 months, humanizes individuals on both sides of the Gaza border without ever addressing the gross power imbalance between Gazans and the residents of Sderot. While working against demonization is important, the refusal to engage with the political decisions that led to the imprisonment of 1.5 million Palestinians is not just problematic, but helps mask this political reality. So this is a very liberal project, very beautiful, and completely problematic. And a month and a half later, Gaza was bombed to shreds, and cement is still not allowed to be brought into Gaza. Israel is refusing that, and Egypt complies. In many ways, it would have been easier ethically and practically to do separate projects, one with and for Palestinians and one with Israelis. The space for a shared project is very narrow and fragile, but we feel strongly that if we want to move beyond the past and into an imagining of a future, the project needs to engage both communities. And when I say both, I always feel bad because it's more than 2 communities. I'm almost done. While unmasking and confronting the power imbalance between the 2 communities. To that extent, it is a feminist project that seeks to go beyond affirmation of one identity, politic group, or even numerous, into the realm of the power dynamics between those groups. I'm going to go very briefly through the elements of the project because the offline, this has come up a lot today and yesterday, the questions around offline and online communities. So what we will have is an interactive website which will consist of a map of the neighborhood, and it could be accessed vertically or horizontally. So one can go into their house and find all the people that have lived there, or they can go, let's say 1960, and find all the people in the neighborhood, which were primarily Arab Jews who were then moved to project housing. So it's something that I didn't get a chance to talk about, but there is a lot of inter-ethnic issues within the Jewish community, the Israeli community. We're hoping to have interior design software that will allow former and current residents to recreate their interior spaces. And the website will also host oral narratives, pictures, or any other materials that families would like to include. Interested families will produce short 3 to 5 minute video about their homes. These videos are not lengthy oral histories or documentary accounts, but rather short films carefully designed and produced in collaboration with the families. Both the videos and, Both the videos and the website materials will be edited to produce portable device tours of the neighborhood. These tours will be downloadable and can be accessed and used in multiple settings, so actual tours with a guide, personal tours, or virtual tours by Palestinians who by and large do not have access to that part of Jerusalem. Seminars and roundtable with former and current residents, seminars for scholars and artists dealing with memory, political trauma, and digital art. And finally, and very importantly, this project is designed to be a flexible template that can be adopted in other contexts. All the materials, guidelines, and software developed in the project will be made available to similar projects and for educational purposes. And we're currently negotiating with the National Film Board of Canada in the hopes, because they have a very active educational arm, which will facilitate a much, much bigger outreach. I'll stop here, and I'd love your comments about especially about the ethical questions of differential power relations between Israelis and Palestinians, the possibility or whether it's right to have these communities work on the same project, and also the online and offline digital components. Thank you very much.